The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Charles Michel, Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Belgium. May I request protocol to escort His Excellency. I have great pleasure in welcoming His Excellency Charles Michel, Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Belgium, and invite him to address the General Assembly.
Monsieur le Président,
President of the General Assembly, Secretary General of the United Nations, ladies and gentlemen, heads of state and government, ladies and gentlemen, heads of delegation, ladies and gentlemen. In order to build a world based on rules, to promote dignity and universal values, to surmount the challenge of climate change, and to engage humanity on the path to sustainable development, that constitutes the commitment which should bring us all together. Every country, every nation has its unique history, its unique benchmarks. However, every human being harbors a spark of liberty, a thirst for freedom and emancipation. These are universal values which nobody can seek to undermine. This is the substance of the Charter of the United Nations. In a changing world, stated Jacques Chirac, there is no greater risk than that of remaining immobile. Multilateralism is movement and ongoing dialogue, firstly to understand each other, to respect one another, and to build the foundations of trust. Of course, disputes abound, single-mindedness is rife, misunderstanding is possible, but history always reflects the following: progress resides in cooperation. To be a patriot is to love one's own, to wish the best for them, to wish the best for one's loved ones and for others. This is the very essence of our organization. It is not about dividing, opposing, regressing. On the contrary, it is about connecting, coming together, amplifying, better deployment. And this with the most potent bond of all, namely universal values and rule of law. Three global challenges are presently testing our humanity, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, climate change. Second, sustainable development. And third, peace and security. And these three challenges are, as we are aware, inextricably entwined. Unstinting will, innovation, and intelligence are more necessary than ever before. Bold, courageous, and visionary multilateralism is indispensable. Nature speaks, and human beings do not listen. This is what Victor Hugo said in the 19th century. Our Secretary General, with trenchant words of justice, perfectly encapsulated the urgent need to take action to surmount the climate urgency. We mustn't be stricken to inaction through fear or anger. These are always poor counselors. On the contrary, it is incumbent upon us to transform calls to our conscience into irreversible positive forces, to clear-sightedly identify the issue and to act with courage. Each day we observe the impact of climate change. It is increasingly visible, increasingly catastrophic. Most recent assessments point to the fact that this trend is accelerating, and efforts that have already been undertaken are not enough. In this spirit, an overwhelming majority of European states have adopted a commitment to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. I welcome the initiative of Chile, which is to achieve climate neutrality in line with the Paris Agreement. Preservation of biodiversity, of our forests and our oceans also should lie at the heart of our concerted initiatives. Climate change has a structural impact on food, security, on migration, and even stability in a number of countries. However, I would call for the responsibility to be risen to. Let us not flounder in the anguishing trap of catastrophic thinking. The transition to carbon neutrality will generate opportunities for development and for better living standards. Innovation, technology, a spirit of initiative, freedom of entrepreneurship are more critical than ever before, and we are all accountable actors, governments, businesses, startups, associations. This is an optimistic message that I am conveying. We can succeed and we must succeed. Ladies and gentlemen, Belgium, my country, with our European partners, stands determined to make a contribution to our global effort. To mitigate the climate threat, it is incumbent upon us to advance progress towards achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals because they are the cornerstone of human dignity and our collective security. Through her conscientious engagement as the SDG advocate, Queen Mathilde has reflected the sincere commitment of my country to these lofty goals. And progress, tangible progress, has been achieved. There is no gainsaying that fact. Extreme poverty has reached its lowest registered level. Infant mortality has been reduced. Infectious diseases strike with less frequency thanks to access to health care. Access to drinking water has improved. Access to education has improved. Progress is real. However, we know that tremendous work lies ahead to achieve further progress. Every 11 seconds, a pregnant woman or a newborn dies worldwide. Hundreds of millions of people lack reliable access to drinking water. Too many children are unable to attend school and are afflicted every day by malnutrition. It is incumbent upon us to innovate, to continue to act, to make progress. The private sector can spearhead efforts to counter poverty. Free trade with rules of reciprocity and rigorous social environmental standards is to be fostered. Investment in basic infrastructure and technological innovation should also be amplified. New technology, artificial intelligence, and a data-driven economy should also be subjected to greater regulation in order to uphold personal freedoms, to respect privacy, to uphold democratic values against any and all arbitrary intrusions in our freedom of conscience and freedom of expression. Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary General's most recent report quite rightly reflects the fact that gender equality is of vital importance to achieve development. I take great pride in the fact that our Vice Prime Minister, Alexander De Croo, has ardently advocated this premise in his book entitled The Woman's Century. I share this conviction. Feminism, ladies and gentlemen, is also a concern of men. It is incumbent upon us to change our thinking. This is necessary for all to seek to achieve. It is necessary to eradicate all scourges: racism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, marginalization, Islamophobia, hate speech are devastatingly toxic. This is insidious, brutal violence, which is unworthy. To be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others, stated Nelson Mandela. Ladies and gentlemen, absent progress, peace is not possible. Absent peace, progress is not possible. For the 6th time in our history, my country, Belgium, is a non-permanent member of the Security Council. We contribute on a day-to-day basis to crisis prevention and resolution. We seek to place uppermost priority on the protection of civilians, specifically women and children, in each peacekeeping operation, has its own specific set of challenges, is necessary. Mandates need to be more specific, better targeted. The requirement of efficiency and effectiveness should be upheld. We need to attend to tensions, simmering conflicts. Today they may not be making headlines, but tomorrow they may rapidly boil over into full-blown strife. It is necessary we address root causes, deal with problems at their root, strengthen mediation, engage in political dialogue, strengthen intercommunal ties, promote democratic values, counter hate speech, and reject impunity. Ladies and gentlemen, the world is in flux. We wish to see it better, less unpredictable, more predictable. The proliferation of tensions and crises, if they are not stamped out quickly enough, are liable to mushroom into graver threats to peace and security in the Gulf region. Tensions are escalating. This imperils not merely regional stability, but also global stability. The oil facilities and the Strait of Hormuz are, as we are aware, strategically important for the global economy, and we call upon all stakeholders to refrain from any unilateral measures that are liable to foment tensions. It is incumbent upon us to avoid any incident that is liable to trigger even more devastating consequences. We call for dialogue and restraint to pave the way for a stable and secure region in the Gulf region. The divergence of views on the Iranian nuclear accord is at the crux of current tensions. We continue to support the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. We call for discussions to be resumed on all issues of concern, the nuclear issue, as well as Iran's regional role and its ballistic missiles program. We fully support the mediation efforts that are underway and have been spearheaded by France. Ladies and gentlemen, the situation in Syria is also gravely concerning, and we are troubled by escalating violence within and around Idlib. Within the Security Council, with Germany and Kuwait, we've adopted a position against this spiraling violence. Last week, we proposed a humanitarian resolution, the aim of which is to establish a ceasefire and to protect millions of civilians who reside in that area. We regret the fact that despite broad support, this was subjected to a double veto. The bombardment of civilians, schools, and hospitals do not help to counter terrorism. On the contrary, they likely further inflame tensions and fuel terrorism. We have not and we shall not abandon the Syrian people. Only a political process under the aegis of the United Nations will help to end this suffering. The Constitutional Committee set up is a step in the right direction. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been inscribed on the agenda of this assembly for decades, and yet today peace is more elusive than ever before. The situation on the ground is crumbling. Violence and mistrust is gaining ground. Settlement activity is ongoing. It is incumbent upon us to embrace and to facilitate the dawn of a fair, lasting peace for the benefit of Palestinians and Israelis and the whole of the region. The parameters to address the situation for a fair, lasting peace are well known. International law is the cornerstone of the multilateral order, and any initiative that seeks to circumvent this spawns more injustice and more conflict. The aim is still the creation of an independent, sovereign, democratic, and viable Palestinian state living side by side in peace and security with its neighbors. Israel needs to enjoy peace and security within secure and internationally recognized borders. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Belgium's leading development partner, we remain galvanized alongside the people. The initial gestures of openness of a political space, for example, the release of political prisoners, are heartening. However, challenges remain, and they are formidable as we endeavor to meet people's legitimate expectations and aspirations. We support all positive forces, the aim of which is to advance a blueprint for a better future for this great country at the heart of Central Africa. Turning to the Sahel, the security situation there is deteriorating despite the actions undertaken by states in the region and the efforts of the international community. Insecurity is proliferating. Intercommunal conflict is fueled by the proliferation of militias. This is being capitalized upon by terrorist groups. They are steadily spreading their deadly tentacles beyond G5 countries and are threatening coastal states and neighboring states. People are continuing to move. Cultures are being imperiled. The humanitarian situation is overwhelmed by people brutalized by conflict. We need to address the situation, step up financial commitments to address this. Ladies and gentlemen, we have not been rid of terrorism. The collapse of the so-called caliphate in Iraq and Syria does not spell out the end of this deadly criminal ideology. Daesh continues to engage in recruitment, to indoctrinate people, and targets innocent, vulnerable targets such as and law enforcement with barefaced cynicism. It seeks to radicalize people and continues to heighten sentiment of hate and anxiety. My country, like others, was directly afflicted by the scourge of terrorism. Our fighting spirit in the face of violent extremism must not waver. Prevention and suppression need to be more efficient. And here too, international cooperation is of vital importance to eradicate the scourge that has wrought untold sorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, a more stable, a more predictable, and a fairer world is the dream that we seek to achieve. We wish this for our children and for our children's children. We want to have a healthier planet for them, better living standards, rights, and freedoms. This is a universal dream. It cannot be thwarted by any border. Eradicating the climate threat, achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, and working ceaselessly for peace and security requires a shared, unshakable commitment to prevent conflict at its root, to diffuse conflict, to peacefully settle disputes, to weave the fabric of dialogue, and to build trust is what we believe to be necessary to rise to the occasion, rising to the occasion, upholding the United Nations Charter, which requires us to honor universal values to which we have bound ourselves. Rising to this occasion means upholding the humanity that resides within each of us, in our souls and in our hearts. Thank you.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank His Excellency Charles Michel, Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Belgium, for the statement just made, and I request protocol to escort His Excellency.